So I've got Jason here, and we're going to talk about uppers. We already went over barrels. We're going to go over the next kind of big piece in the upper receiver, the upper receiver. So, Jason, why don't you tell me some good things to look for when you're picking out an upper?
Good things to look for when picking out an upper, I really think would depend on what kind of a build we're doing. Uh, for example, if you're doing a long range or a precision upper, you're going to want to look for a tighter upper receiver extension, which can be found either by getting a BCM, Bravo Company manufacturing upper, or doing a cerakoted upper when doing like a shorter pistol build or SBR or anything like that where precision is not the name of the game. That would be something that's less important. Something that I would place importance on that others don't would be a forward assist. Um, I kind of fall under the camp of I'd rather have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. I know that the reliability of the AR platform has come a long way since Eugene Stoner first sat down at the workbench. However, given my background, being a combat paratrooper, like it's just one of those like it doesn't really add any weight to the rifle. I'd rather have it and not need it. So, um,
Perfect. And I know you mentioned for a long range upper getting a tighter fit. So you mean a thermal fit?
so BCM uses a thermal fit. I'm sure there's other companies out there that do as well, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. And so, for those of you that are visual learners like myself, what I mean as far as a thermal fit or a tighter fit, right in here where your barrel goes into the upper receiver. Um, this being a cerakoted arrow upper, I likely am going to have to heat this up with a heat gun in order to get the barrel in there. But what happens is when it cools down, it grabs the barrel tighter and it helps dampen harmonics. And so that's less vibration in the barrel, which leads to a more accurate upper receiver.
Sweet. And then also, I do know that you do lapping on all your own personal builds and then some of the builds we do here. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so lapping, same principle as far as dampening the harmonics with the tighter fit of the barrel. Lapping is when we're going to true up this face right here so that your barrel extension seats flatter. And thank you. What we're doing is we're using a lapping tool. This is a hardened steel rod, and we use some 220 grit lapping compound. This goes in here, and then what it does is it basically trues up the face on here by rubbing up against this surface right here. Um, this being a cerakoted upper, I don't want to mess with the cerakote finish on the inside because you could get a little bit of wear in here if we've got any of our lapping compound that leaks onto the bar. Um, these guys come from Wheeler Engineering. It does come with a chuck for putting it to a hand drill, although because it's got to allow for flexibility so you're getting an even rub, I've actually found that hand turning it as opposed to chucking it up to a drill is faster and a little bit more effective. But what you're doing is you're just putting some lapping compound up on there, you're twisting it, and then eventually you're going to watch this surface. Your high spots are going to wear first, and so you're going to start to get bare aluminum, and depending on where the high spot is, you're going to go until you get a nice uniform aluminum exposure on the front, and then that way you know that the front of the upper receiver has been trued up.
Okay. So I know we just went over lapping, and you had mentioned there's going to be bare aluminum on the actual upper receivers. Anything people need to worry about with that bare aluminum, being exposed at all?
So a lot of guys, because there is bare aluminum, are going to want to cover that back up, whether it be with spray paint, alumihide. The thing is you don't want to do that specifically because if we're taking a cerakoted upper and we're trying to true up the face and then you try and resurface that with paint or anything like that, now you're going back and you're likely going to add a high spot, which is exactly what you tried to remove. This is going to be, it's going to have the barrel extension mated up against it. You're going to have some anti-seize compounds in your thread. Um, and it's just one of those things where even though it's bare aluminum, it's going to be sealed by your barrel nut. Uh, don't worry about that. You're trying to get the exposed bare metal right there to get a true fit of your barrel extension up against that.
Awesome. And then you also did mention the anti-seize compound. What's the real purpose of the anti-seize? Because I know some companies actually either over torque or some of them put damn near Loctite or JB Weld on there. So what's the point of the anti-seize?
So the anti-seize is basically if you change your barrel or you want to change your handguard later on down the road, you're putting a compound on your threads so that the metals don't seize to each other. I can't give you the exact science behind it because I am not a chemist, but essentially what happens is when you've got steel barrel nuts mating to aluminum and stuff like that, oxidation is one type of thing, but basically you'll have different types of metals that will want to seize to each other, which would make removal of that barrel nut really difficult. So we use a copper anti-seize. It's very effective. I've had customers come in and do a build. Year and a half later, they went, hey, I decided I want to swap out to a Geisley handguard. I want to change my barrel out and do a longer, more precision barrel, et cetera, et cetera. Using that copper anti-seize allows us to get that barrel nut loose without breaking a barrel nut wrench. And it protects things from rusting up, seizing up, all that stuff, but still allows you to maintain proper torque on your barrel nut.
Well, cool. So, Jason, say you were going to go buy an upper. What features are you looking for in upper that make it worth it to you in terms of price? Because we see a wide variation of prices from different companies, from $40 up to, a few $100. What are you specifically looking for in terms of price range and features when you're looking to buy an upper?
So I try not to get hung up on the idea of looking for name, but name is going to carry a certain amount of weight in this category, and I'll explain why. You definitely do have the difference between forged uppers and billet uppers. Forged being there's a mold for the upper, they're going to pour in and fill the mold, and then it's going to get it close, and then there are people that are going to argue, oh, there's only like 4 forges out there, bro, which is true. They're making the general mold, but then from the mold, those get shipped off to different manufacturers that finish them out, and they do go on a CNC machine. And this is why, like for example, a forged BCM upper is going to have a tighter tolerance in the barrel extent or in the upper receiver extension, excuse me, because they machine it to be tighter. Um, the Your other option, as opposed to forged, would be billet, where it starts off as one giant block of aluminum, and then the CNC machine does all the work. Um, that can lead to different price points as well, just because one, there's more machining on the manufacturer's part. You can also get much more custom design cuts, whether they be for lightning purposes, as far as making it a lighter receiver set, putting cool designs in there. One thing to consider there, though, is the type of aluminum that they're starting with. 7075 T6 series aluminum is going to be one of your more sturdy aluminums. Some companies, like if you figure some of the decorative, like spikes, lowers, for example, they've got the cool Spartan shield for the magwell, or Spartan helmet, I should say, for the magwell, or stuff like that. Oftentimes, what will happen is they'll use 6000 series, the 6064 aluminum, because it's softer and it's easier on the drill bits, and so their drill bits can get more life out of them by machining a softer aluminum. That doesn't necessarily come into play for some people if they're using your anti-walk pins, but things when you've got hardened steel parts rubbing on softer aluminum, that aluminum is gonna open up and it's gonna wear faster than it would on a stronger aluminum. Um, as far as like some of your cheaper uppers out there, Anderson's probably the first one that comes to mind. Here's the thing: there's plenty of uppers out there that Anderson has produced that have worked well for people. But what we've seen as far as Anderson as a company, their quality control is not as stringent as other companies. So yeah, they can put out 100 upper receivers, and 97 of those will be great. 3 of those will be out of spec and need to be sent in and RMA'd by the customer or the end user because something doesn't line up when they go to assemble the upper. Um, you still got 97 of them that work, but we've just noticed that they've had more go backs than other companies. As far as Aero Precision, like this is their M4E1 upper, as opposed to their X15 upper. Their X15 is going to be a mil spec profile, no frills, no bells, no whistles. The M4E1 upper, for example, is just going to have a little bit of a lightning cut in there. You're not really shaving all that much weight, but what you're doing is just adding a more pleasing aesthetic look to it. Some people really like that. Some people don't really see the added benefit in that. That's going to be a personal choice. That's going to be up to you, the end user. My opinion on that, his opinion on that, doesn't really matter because if it's not our upper, then who cares as far as that. One of the nice features of the M4E1 enhanced upper, though, is using a threaded screw instead of a roll pin for your forward assist. For the at-home builder, that definitely makes things a little bit easier. You're less worried about marking up your upper when driving in a roll pin. It makes it a lot easier to just hold your forward assist in with one hand and then screw in the set screw with the other. Is it necessary? No. Is it more convenient? Yes. A little bit of Loctite on this thing. It's not going anywhere, and it's a little easier than having to hold this in, hold a pin punch, and drive a roll pin through.
So just to wrap everything up, one, thanks Jason for coming and explaining all that. But
Absolutely.
we hope that we kind of help lift the veil for everybody in terms of some of these parts that don't get spoken about very often, about why it's important to choose a good upper receiver, but why you don't have to spend a couple hundred, $300, $400 on an upper receiver. You can still get a quality one for not a whole lot of money, but also what to look for when you're looking for an upper receiver, especially if you're using it for a specific purpose. As you know, he said, precision ones, you're kind of looking for different stuff versus your general purpose ones. So thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.
See ya.